Ladies and gentlemen, was this your card? Oh, well, you would have had a very good week then, wouldn't you? Was this your card? Terrible week for you, sir. Try better next week. Or were you a bit like me and a bit middle of the road and no one gives a shit? Anyway, let's see what's on the cards this week. What's going on, guys? It's Burgz from The Casual Athlete, and while I've not been a magician when it comes to tipping this year, I will admit I am enjoying all of the footy being played at the moment, especially over the last round, Magic Round. It was a fantastic event up in Brisbane, and we had 7 games decided by 12 points or less. Just goes to show how competitive this year's competition is. But before we get into our video, guys, just a reminder to like and subscribe to the channel. We bring out new content each and every week just for you guys, whether it be fantasy, tipping, or general NRL content. Please make sure that you subscribe and like each and every one of our videos to make sure that you don't miss out on any of our new content. Now, let's just take a quick look back at how I did last week. As I said in my intro, guys, I only got 4 correct last week, and it started off with a loss on Friday night. And the Dogs, well, they did not get the win here, and I tell you what, I thought their defense was extremely solid in coming into this game, but they let 24 points in from the Raiders, and 2 tries gifted to the Raiders from mistakes straight away, and that does not bode well for trying to win a game, especially when you're a team that struggles to score points in the Dogs. And I gotta say, Ethan Strange really stood up in this game, as well as Hudson Young. He really pushed for that New South Wales spot. Good on the Raiders for getting the win there. For the Broncos game, well, they snuck home with the victory in this one, and Jock Madden iced it with a field goal there. I think a lot of people have been talking about who's going to replace Adam Reynolds, and Jock Madden has been doing a fantastic job. Good on you, Jock. Hopefully it keeps going for him. For the Titans, yeah, were they robbed or were they not robbed is the question you need to be asking in this game. They had a try disallowed in the last 5 minutes or so to tie the game, and I gotta say, I was a big fan of them getting given the try just because I tipped them. But I think the correct call was made in the end. Unfortunately, I've come around to my senses on that one, and Desi will have to lick his wounds for another week. For the Sharkies, again, they stood up. They got the big win against the Roosters, another form team in the competition. This is the Sharks' hardest stretch of the season so far, and they're 2-0 coming into it. So, man, they've got a big task on their hands this week in Penrith. Let's see how they stack up in that one. For the Cowboys, this was ugly. I got to say, we got a win, and I'm happy about that, but it's the 2 points, and I just don't know if we fixed anything. I just think the Rabbitohs were worse than the teams that we have been playing in the last couple of weeks. And the Cowboys were lucky to not concede another try in this game to potentially go into Golden Point. I did not want it to go to Golden Point. I was sick of watching this game. We completed at 67%. And you're just not going to win many games like that. Fortunately, we were playing the worst team in the NRL right now. But the Cowboys need to do some serious looking at themselves at this point in time. But good on them for getting the win. Yeah, great. For the Panthers, man, I got this game completely wrong. I thought the Wars, even without Tohu Harris, were inspiring. They just wouldn't give up. They wouldn't go away. Penrith couldn't put him away either. They kept dropping the ball, very un-Penrith-like in this game. And Tane Topiki was outstanding at the back. Boy, what a breakout game for him. For the Storm, they got a big win against the Eels. It was the biggest win of Magic Round, and I tell you what, the Eels were very lucky not to concede that 50th point and rule themselves out for the premiership race, even though I don't think they're in it to begin with. And there's a lot of issues there for the Eels right now, and we will talk about that when it comes to their tip this week. And for the Tigers, man, I just think I've got to stop tipping the Tigers. They keep disappointing. They don't score enough points. I think without Aiden Caesar, their average points per game is 13 points, and they were right around that again with 12. So, yeah, I think I've got to look a bit more into the analytics of Tigers games before I start tipping them a little bit more. But they do have a juicy fixture this week. Let's see if they can get on top again. Now, with all that done and dusted, let's take a look at the TCA tipping comp. We are running with NRLtipping.com this year, and no change at the top this week as we have the North Sydney Bears run by Chris on 65 points there. Callan did chip into his lead, and as did Benny Backshots, who is in second place. congratulations to these guys again. But we do have Axel also in fourth place, just behind on 1 point with margin there with Callan. So it's getting juicy up the top, guys. Keep putting in your tips each and every week. I do update the comp on my videos each and every week. Now, let's get into this week's tips, guys. The first game of round 12 is the Dogs taking on the Dragons at Accor Stadium. Now, over the last 10 games between these two teams, the Dragons have the better record, winning 6 out of those last 10 games. And the Dragons, well, they were the only team admitted from Magic Round last week. They had the bye, and the Dogs, well, they played on Friday night and a tough game against Canberra. I do think with a few less errors, that game could have gone the Dogs' way, but they just were not in the fight and were not focused on the task at hand and let the Raiders run roughshod. And I got to say, for the Dogs, I thought that they were building into their season really well, and that has stunted their growth for me a little bit. I'm a little bit less inclined to tip the Dogs here, and the injuries either side aren't really a factor, but I just think with the Dragons getting an extra week off, it's really helped those couple of teams. For the Raiders, for example, they played on the back of the bye this week, and did they not look fresh? For the Dogs, Matt Burton is looking quite good for me. I would almost think that he would be a nail on for Origin at this point, whether it be 14, just because he can cover that outside back and 5'8" role, which we've seen Jack Whiten do a number of times, or you can stick him at centre because he is a phenomenal centre, and we all know that. And for the Dragons, well, Lomax will be looking to push for a spot, and there is 2 available, I would say, for him. Whether it be at centre or wing, he's going to have to decide on which one he's going to look at. But I think this year you need to be able to put him on the wing. I just think for the Dragons, the week off will benefit them a lot, and some of their guys get a little bit of extra time to come back, including Luciano Leilua. I just think the Dragons have a better forward pack right now. The Dogs looking a little banged up. Viliami Kikau copped a few knocks last week. I'm going to go the Dragons in this one. I just think with the week off, it's going to benefit them. Dragons 1-12. Our second game of the round, and we're back in North Queensland where the Cowboys will be taking on the Tigers. Now, over the last 10 games, the Tigers have the better record, winning 6 out of those last 10 games, and we all know the stories from last year. Leichhardt Oval, 66-18, the Tigers announced themselves a new era in their history, only to be overwritten 5 weeks later by a Cowboys 74-0 thrashing. 2 of the wildest scorelines between 2 teams in, I reckon, ever in the NRL era. It was unbelievable, and I've got a couple of Tigers fans in my life, and boy, did I cop it that night at Leichhardt, I've got to tell you. But this game is in North Queensland, and for these 2 teams, we get a couple of ins. Isaiah Papali'i will come back in after suspension for the Tigers, and I expect Kyle Felt to come back in, although Braden Burns was awesome on debut, grabbed a double there, and that was great to see him. He's had a very injury-riddled career, and I've always been a big fan of Braden Burns, so good to see he had a good game on debut for us. For the Cowboys, the outlook is this: hold the ball and you will win. I just don't understand how you can be a first grade player and be so drop ball prone. It is unbelievable to me how much the Cowboys dropped the ball. We completed at 67% against the Rabbitohs. We still won the game, but I got to say it was an absolute shit show. For the Tigers, well, they're just not scoring enough points right now. And one thing that the Cowboys do offer is points. And I think for the Tigers, we could be one of those teams that just clicks them into gear, and the Tigers can really build off that for this season and try and get a couple more wins. I just think the Cowboys are just would then it's very hard to click into form when you're not in form. And Drinkwater is always looking for those attacking opportunities. And I noticed a couple of times we made a couple of line breaks last week. Robbo especially, that was the big one for me. Robson made a great line break down the middle, and there was zero support for him. He's not going to score himself, so you may as well run with him. I just, man, I don't know. At this point, I do think that Tom Dearden and Val Holmes will be in the Queensland side as well as Ruben Cotter, but do they deserve to be? I'm a bit iffy on that. As far as the tip goes for this game, geez. I'm going to go the Cowboys. I just hope that we build off our win last week in the Tigers. They've got a couple of important blokes out right now. Aiden Caesar especially. He really helps them score a few more points. But I'm just so worried in this game because they did it to us last year. I'm going to go the Cowboys, 1-12. Friday night at Brookie, and we've got the Seagulls taking on the Storm. Now, over the last 10 games between these two teams, the Storm have the better record, winning 7 out of those last 10 games. But I've got to say, this has been one of my favourite matchups, I would say, over the last 20 years or so. I loved watching these two teams as a young kid. I can remember some great games out of Brookie, got very fiery. Obviously, the grand finals are in there as well, although there's a couple of asterisks there for the Storm. In this one, though, the outlook is looking a bit grim for the Storm. Cameron Munster went down with a groin injury, and it's one that he has been struggling with towards the start of the season. He was basically saying that his groin is never going to be 100% coming into this year, and he looked gone last week. It looked like he had ripped something from God knows where, and we'll be waiting to see on scans about that one. Jarome Hughes is slated to come back in this game, and then we also have Tepai Moroa due to come back. On the Manly side of things, they should get Nathan Brown back in, and he has been the enforcer in this team since he's come in there. They did lose Matt Lodge, so that will help as well. I just think Manly, without Tom Turbo, they just lack a lot of experience at the back. I know Kohler tried his absolute guts out the other night, and they were very close to a victory. Olakuatu, again, I think that bloke has to get picked for Origin at this stage. You cannot omit him from the team. He provided a nice try assist. The pass might have been forward. Let's, ease up on that one. But he is seeing the game at a different level now for me. He easily beats the first tackle. He can get an offload. He provides try assists. He can score a try. I just think he needs to be in our team on the bench as a weapon that we bring off when the game is looking a little bit fatigued. But man, for this game, if Munster's out and Hughes doesn't play and Pappenhausen doesn't play, then it's all on Harry Grant. But I got to say, Melbourne, they looked all right with Munster off the field. They scored 32 points to 6 in the second half against the Eels, but I just wonder whether Manly are a little bit of a bigger kettle of fish than the Eels right now. Certainly their defensive effort was on the weekend. I'm going to go Manly in this one, back at Brookvale. I just think that they need a win at this stage, and they'll be a little bit hungrier for it, and Melbourne having to go from Suncorp back to Melbourne, back up to Sydney to play this game. A little bit of travel involved. Don't know if it'll play into it too much, but I expect Manly to get a win here, 1-12. Next up, we're down in Canberra, where the Raiders will be taking on the Roosters, 6th versus 7th on the competition table. The Roosters have the better record over the last 10 games, winning 6 out of those last 10 games. Big out last week for the Roosters, although they did score 30 points, but I do think that Joey Manu could have been the difference in that game. He is due to come back this week, had a little bit of a concussion issue. And for the Raiders, I thought they were excellent last week. Ethan Strange is just coming along in leaps and bounds right now. For a 19-year-old to be shouldering the amount of pressure that he is under right now, him and KO Weeks, I thought KO Weeks signing for the Raiders was going to be a bit of a flop. I didn't really see a position for KO Weeks to be on the field, and he's really made that number 7 position his own. Really good running game, and he is quick, man. Bit of lightning under those feet. I think the Roosters showed enough last week that they are still competition heavyweights, and their forward pack is still very scary. I think JWH, along with Terrell May, Lindsay Collins, and Spencer Leniu, I don't know if there's a better 4 forwards that you could have on at any one time in the competition, and that is a bold statement. So for the Raiders, they also have a fantastic forward pack, and that is where this game is going to be played. These two teams, over the last 2 games especially, Canberra have won both of them, by the way. It's been very close, and I expect it to be close again. I think the Raiders, I give them a little bit of an edge playing at home, but I just think the Roosters got a bit unlucky last week in the fact that they had to play the Sharks, and the Sharks are in red-hot form. I didn't think the Roosters were all the way there, whereas the Sharks, to me, are showing that they are one of the competition heavyweights, and the Roosters were just behind. But in this one, I've got to go the Roosters. I think they get it done here, and I'm actually going to go a big one. I think they get it done 13 plus. Saturday 5:30, and we're out at Shark Park, where the Sharks will be taking on the Panthers, first versus third on the competition ladder. The Panthers have the better record, though, over the last 10 games. They've won 6 out of those games, but they do have a poor record at Shark Park, winning only 1 out of their last 5 outings there. And aside from the injuries to the Panthers that we know of, we've got Nathan Cleary out at the moment. They did not play like the Panthers on the weekend. I got to say that Dylan Edwards was still phenomenal, and yes, look, he had a chance to tie the game, but he's not the kicker. He never has been the kicker. I think that missing a guy like Stephen Crichton, who was also very good when Nathan Cleary was out to kick goals, it's very tough to come in there. And that 35-meter penalty kick from front on, you don't tend to do it a lot, especially if you're not the first choice kicker. So I'm going to give him a pass mark on that one. But the big thing for me was that they dropped the ball a lot. And now they're going to go out to Shark Park, and they're playing probably the best team in the comp right now in the Sharks. And let's talk about the Sharks for a minute. I thought Nico Hines was outstanding. Ramian is an absolute beast at right centre right now. He is outstanding, just putting on a display each and every time he gets the opportunity, and I do not think he would look out of place in a New South Wales Blues jersey. Katoa, Mulatalo, Iro is stepping up. We had Sifa Talakai coming off the bench, and he is running off the back fence, and their middles are just doing such a good job. Tommy Hazelton, where has he come from? He is an absolute superstar in the front row. Really interested to see the battle that he will have with James Fisher-Harris and Moses Leota on the weekend. Man, this tip is super interesting to me. It's Penrith off a loss, and when was the last time that they have lost 2 in a row? Going to have to look into that one. Probably last year, earlier in the season. They didn't start the season very well. But again, I got to go the Sharkies, man. They're just too good to look away from. And Penrith's record out at Shark Park doesn't help me tip them either. I'm going to go the Sharks, 1-12. Saturday night at Accor Stadium, we have the Rabbitohs taking on the Eels. And over the last 10 games between these two teams, the Rabbitohs have the better record, winning 8 out of those last 10 games, whereas the Eels last year, they got their win to break the streak of the Rabbitohs, 7 games in a row that was. And this is also a different Rabbitohs that we are looking at right now. Again, on the weekend, couldn't beat the Cowboys after the Cowboys only completed at 67%. For the Eels, man, I just think it's an attitude thing. Like, one try seems to bring 2 at the moment, and they can't stop a momentum shift. They're really struggling in that department. And as we know, it's really hard to wrestle back momentum, but you've got to do it with an outstanding play like a force an error or kick really deep, kick early, and chase really hard. But man, the Eels, they just keep getting lulled into a false sense of security, and then teams are pouncing just like that. And before you know it, the Eels, man, they're down by 20 points, and they're looking at the scoreboard going, how the hell did that happen? I just don't know how to explain it for Eels fans right now. This is a real danger game for me, especially for the Eels. The Eels need a win, but so do the Rabbitohs. The Rabbitohs are sitting on 1 win from 10 games this year. If you told me that that was going to happen at the start of this season, would have been the ultimate prediction. I'm going to go the Bunnies this week. I know, bold one, and they're going to be my Hills Cricket Academy lock of the week. That's right. We need to get on the Bunnies. They need to break this losing streak. For the Eels, man, I just think I'm hearing Moses is going to be out again this week, and Dejan Arce just isn't providing enough for me in terms of help to Dylan Brown. Dylan Brown, again, didn't kick that much on the weekend. There may be something wrong there, and the stat that I brought up last week about them without Clint Gutherson is extremely telling. They haven't won a game without him in the team since 2017. Sucks to be the Eels right now, but I'm going to go the Rabbitohs, 1-12. Sunday starts at Suncorp, where we've got the Broncos taking on the Titans. Now, over the last 10 games between these two teams, it's a little bit different. We have the Broncos winning 5, the Gold Coast winning 4, and there's a draw in the middle there. And for the Broncos, they should get Reece Walsh back this week. And boy, he would have been a massive difference in the game against Manly. And then I do think Payne Haas will back up for this one, despite coming back from the dead last week. I think it was a calf towards foot issue, toe issue, lost all feeling in his big toe. Bizarre injury, but we move on. And on the Titans side of things, we have Jaden Campbell, who will be coming back for this game, and then Kieran Foran should also be available for this one. And those are two welcomed ins, considering the two halves that they named last week. I thought, though, Thomas Weaver did an admirable job in the halves, and they were looking good in that game against the Knights. And I know Knights fans love me at the moment because every time I tip against the Knights at the moment, they seem to win. So unfortunately, that streak will come to an end this week with them on the bye. We'll have to pick it up again next week. But yeah, I just thought the Titans, they had a chance there at the end. I think that referee's decision really could have gone either way, and they could have maybe got it done in Golden Point. Maybe. I just don't know who would have kicked the field goal, considering they had 7 hookers on the field. I did like what I saw from David Fafita as well. He is in supreme form, even on the back of all the controversy that he's gone through. He's a lot of it he brought on himself, but to block all that out and still play to a very high level was insane. So against the Broncos this week, they're getting by right now. The Broncos, they're not fully fit. They're just doing enough to win games, and that's all you need to do. And I think that's what they'll do in this one. I think they'll scrape by with another win and get it done 1-12. Last game of the round, and we're in Auckland for the Warriors taking on the Dolphins. Now, there's only 2 games that have been played between these two teams, and they went either way. The Dolphins won 1, the Warriors won 1. One team scored 30 points, and the other team scored 10 points or less. So, last year was a bit of a rocky road for the Dolphins, and they kind of stunted the Warriors' push into the finals last year with a win in September. And I got to say, this year, the Dolphins, they're in the top 4 right now at the halfway mark almost. And man, they're sitting on 7 wins and 3 losses. I just love the way that they are playing at the moment. They seem to be really solid in defense, but also can score points like that. And guys like the Hammer, Yikarima can really take it away from you in games. I just think that they're playing for each other a lot. The emergence of Isaiah Katoa, I know I've spoken about it in recent weeks, but the way he is able to manage the game for them has really helped them this year and really gets them out of trouble at times. I got nothing but praises for that kid right now. For the Warriors, they got a great win last week. They beat Penrith on the back of 5 losses in a row, and boy, did they need it. I've got to say, the guys that stood up in this game, Paul Roach played about 75 minutes with Egan going off the field. If you told me that Harris wasn't going to play, if you told me that Johnson, Tuivasa-Sheck, and Egan weren't going to play, but the Warriors were going to get the win, man, I would not have believed you if I didn't see it myself. Tane Tuapiki stood up in the biggest stage and in Magic Round and dominated. We had Chance Nickel-Klukstar playing at 6, and I thought he did an admirable job as well. They had so many players going on and off the field with HIAs as well. It was unbelievable to watch. And the Warriors, well, they hung in there and they got the win. And Tuapiki, again, he kicked it from basically the sideline to win the game, essentially, what ended up being the winning kick for the Warriors. Coming into this one against the Dolphins, man, do the Warriors back it up? That'd be my question. They're still going to be without Sean Johnson. They're still going to be without RTS. We'll have to wait and see about Wade Egan, but it didn't look good. It was a Category 1. I think he'll be out for this game as well. So they're going to have to bring in maybe a Freddie Lussick, who will be available this week. Chanel Harris-Tavita will also be available. For the Dolphins, they get Max Plath back, so that is a welcomed in for them, but I just don't know if they can back it up 2 weeks in a row, and I've been off the Dolphins in recent weeks. Fuck it. I'm going to go the Warriors again this week. I think they get it done here. 1-12. Come on, the Wars. Get 2 in a row for me. So that's it for this week's tips, guys. Let me know what you think about them down in the comments section below. Please make sure that you like and subscribe to the channel. We bring out so much content each and every week, and I'll catch you on the next one.